Hey, dear proposal friends. We are talking to Henry Brogan today, the CEO of BidScript. Now, I had this conversation with Henry 2 months ago, but I still am thinking about it because of how impactful it was to the proposal process playbook that I now use. He gave amazing insights in this podcast about what AI can be doing that a lot of people are not using AI for, and it's not writing. I can't wait for you to hear this podcast. I hope you had much fun listening to it as I did speaking with Henry. Let's dive in. Hey, Henry, how are you?
Hey, Christina. Very good. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for being on. I'm going to dive right into it. You all already know Henry as CEO of BidScript, and I'm going to jump right in with my first question. And that was like really about kind of the moment where you realized that something within the bid industry, within the proposal industry needed to change, and that BidScript was really the answer to that.
Yeah, so it was a funny story, actually. So my co-founder, Tyler, and I were building software on freelance for different organizations. We were just asking people their problems and building solutions to them. And there was one period of time where we went into a lot of mechanical engineering, civil engineering, sort of industrial contracting businesses. They all said the same problem. They all were talking about bids at that time. There was PQQs and SQs as well. And we actually watched one of them do a tender kickoff, which was painful to watch. And then we also watched one of the sort of office administrators tried to pull together information to fill in one of those questionnaires. And we were just like, there's got to be a better way to do it. So yeah, it all started from there, really.
I think like it's really interesting that you saw immediately how painful it was just to even just start the kickoff call and then pull in that information together. But there's kind of like a little bit of a change that I've seen. And that is a lot of execs nowadays, like sales leaders, kind of see proposals and bids as paperwork, and they don't always see it as a driver of a huge amount of revenue, which we all know that RFPs are. So I'm curious, like what you say to those CROs who are trying to move the needle with their revenue, but they aren't looking at RFPs in the right way to drive that revenue.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's such a sort of, talked about woe point, a lot of sort of execs just, dishing it out, that sort of sales, proposal handoff and sort of CROs favoring the former rather than the latter. But, I think all you need to do is look at the stats. The amount of enterprise value tied up in RFP tender driven processes is insane. I think you look at the US sort of federal government, probably spending close to $700 billion a year, on contracts. Sort of globally, that probably reaches to 1.5 to 2 trillion. And that's in the public sector. And then when you start to look at private sector, which is a little bit hard to estimate, but you could probably say Fortune 500 companies are probably spending close to 3 to 4 trillion a year, probably more, on supplier-led contracts, majority of which, or a significant proportion of which, will go through, again, RFP or tender-driven processes. If I was an advisor to a business and CROs were reluctant about getting involved in RFPs or not giving proposal teams the time of the day or the resource that they deserve, I'd go to the CEO and say that you need a new CRO.
That's a
Yeah.
bold take. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and like what do you think you would say to the CEO? Like how do you think you would convince that person that RFPs are the way to drive that revenue?
Yeah, it's a good question. When you're looking at a sales pipeline and when you're trying to sort of, build pipeline value and forecast your revenues for, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Firstly, on a contractual basis, some of these RFPs are pretty secure contracts for, a 5-year period. So pretty decent cash flow of significant value. And it's a probabilities game. I think if you employ the good professionals and build a team and a good proposal team, you achieve a decent hit rate, you can look at the probabilities and you can build out a pretty sustainable pipeline of revenue just off sort of RFP won contracts. I'll revert back to how much enterprise value is tied up in those processes. And to get your hands on it, you've got to get involved in it.
I see this often from the private sector, haven't had to respond to RFPs, especially like the smaller and medium-sized businesses, Whereas now that's changing. A lot of them are suddenly having to respond to RFPs because they don't have the background of how important it is. They just don't know, and they don't know what they don't know.
We're fortunate enough to have some really good benchmarks on what good practice is and what, good professionals and good proposal teams do to win. I think sort of once people start scratching at the surface and start realizing the level of thought that needs to go into winning one of these RFPs, they'll start to realize that this is not just compliance and admin paperwork. It is actually and can be a sustainable revenue channel if it's tackled appropriately.
And just because like you've seen so many of these sales and bid teams respond to RFPs, and I know you've seen like the process like end to end. Where are you often seeing it break down in the process? And what is the downstream cost of all of that?
One of the key things I see is when you have a BD team or a sales team that is separate to the proposal team, which is common in a lot of businesses. One of the biggest mistakes that we see is not an appropriate area to document the capture information. We all have CRMs, and CRMs are brilliant resources, but they have to be used correctly by those individuals that have access to them. And unfortunately, the majority of the time, they're not. And so there's a lot of information from a sales and a BD standpoint, which might be, passive information, but to the bids and proposal team, that is something that is, a diamond to a win theme or golden thread around. And so that's one big thing that I see, especially in bigger organizations. The other thing is if there is a mismatch in understanding of what RFPs mean and the detail and level of work that they really take to win between the sales and the proposal teams, it can be delayed engagement, delayed sort of activity in sort of, allowing the bid team appropriate time to
Yeah.
ask the relevant questions and start to put in place the plans of how they're going to start to tackle these questions and manage that particular bid in and amongst 8 to 10 others.
What I'm hearing is that you're saying they're not getting to know the customer before the RFP. So we don't have that information to then have a really good response to the RFP. And then also a fundamental misunderstanding between salespeople and then the proposal people of how much an RFP really takes
Yeah,
to win and to
exactly.
respond to. Let's say a proposal person really resonates with what you just said. What advice would you give to them to kind of fix those gaps?
Yeah, gosh, it's a challenging question, and
Yeah.
I think one thing that it sort of anchors so much around it is the culture of the organization. If you're in an organization where there's a high degree of accountability and you can start to, propose new practices or propose new methods of approaching different challenges, you're in a golden spot. If you're in a fortunate position where you've got that good culture, I think if you're in a situation where there is maybe a little bit of dismissal towards the proposal teams and sort of the amount of information that takes, the inner itch of me is to say go find a better company,
Yeah.
but
That's
I
mine too.
won't say that.
Yeah.
I genuinely think you've just got to sort of start to instill that culture, and you've got to have those conversations, those really critical conversations, and you've got to say, look, I need X, Y, Z in place to be able to really convert your leads that you are spending so much time on nurturing and developing, and I don't want all that time to go to waste. And I really want to translate all that work you've done there and all the work that the organization is doing throughout the sort of the last 5 years and really start to embody all of that information in a response that is going to win us that contract. And then in that scenario, everyone is happy, everyone wins, but I can't do that unless we have XYZ in place. Hopefully, if someone is able to have that critical conversation, I hope that their colleague takes it the right way and sort of starts to put those processes in place, and there's mutual benefit at the other side. If not, I'd revert back to what I said before and
Fine as you
go
go.
for another bid team.
Yeah, no, I've seen this play out quite a bit as well, and I think having that conversation is really hard with sales leaders, especially if they are not the most up into what proposal teams do and what it takes to win an RFP, but that conversation is necessary because you're gonna figure out if they are willing to change, and if not, then, like you said, go find somewhere else. Speaking in their language is really important, so, like, using the data and using that information you said, talking about leads that you have in pipeline, revenue generation based on that pipelines. But then there's also the question of AI. We've been talking about first principles and best practices, like where things break down. But now Now, of course, we have AI in the mix, and it's just something that you really have a big background in, especially with BidScript. And so I know that right now, in a lot of the conversations you're having, everybody is throwing AI at everything in general. So I'm curious what your take is on where AI actually gives value to bids and sales teams.
I feel so deeply for our market, the bidding professionals who, within the last year and a half, have probably been pitched an AI tool probably every day in their inbox. And it might not be a bid specific tool, it might be your general sort of freemium tools like a Claude or a ChatGPT. There are a few proposal professionals out there that have really taken this head on and really tried to use these tools in small elements to really try and understand it themselves. And that's one thing that I highly suggest people to do is those tools that are accessible and that you can break into to try, I'd suggest you try them. Because as we know, Christina, a lot of different proposal teams have different workflows, different practices that work for them, and not every tool is built for that. In terms of AI, generically, in terms of where it can sort of add value into a bidding function, a work winning function. I really think AI adds the most value in pushing individuals or pushing those professionals to think and work smarter. There's a lot of talk about automation and automating tasks. A lot of proposal professionals would agree that AI is brilliant to automate the sort of, admin tasks of a function, and that's what it's really good for. But I disagree to an extent in that, and there's a lot of value in being able to push you to think and work smarter. And let's go back to what we were talking about before in terms of that capture, that pre-sales breakdown of information. There's an ability in AI at the minute and sort of AI system design to really like to feed information across all of your business critical software. If you upload an RFP with the US DOJ as a client name, there is a capability in some platforms to run a search across all of your other systems to say, here is all your information, here is all your past dealings, all your pre-sales information with the US DOJ. You spoke to John and Catherine in 2023, and they said that this was a real pain point of theirs. Then bid professionals will look at that and go, hang on a minute, there might be some information there we can craft into our narrative. Equally, there is masses of information out about clients online or on the web, and unfortunately it takes a lot of time to go read up on it all. But again, another use case of AI is to be able to go, deep search the web, and also sort of pull in what is good and forget what is bad, and all of a sudden you can have the client's board minutes from their last quarterly meeting or their last AGM summarized with key points pulled out about this particular contract and what their ambitions are for it. And it's that sort of use case and that capability that can really push bid professionals to think and work smarter. Within that, there is a lot of automation of quote unquote admin tasks, but I see the real value in pushing individuals to really think and work smarter.
So whenever you've spoken to the customer pre-RFP, or even if they are an incumbent, all that information, then every information that is public about them on the web, all of that, you can distill all of that information. Is that kind of like the top AI use case that you are saying for RFPs?
I think that pre-bidding element of a bidding function, so everything from sourcing, contracts to that sort of research to finding information to helping with answer planning and that strategy behind it. I'd say that's where the big value add is. I'm a big believer in that whilst AI is brilliant and is getting, increasingly good at, writing decent copy, and it has a infinite amount of use cases in that regard. I think for, especially complex industries and with changing shifts in perspectives from buyers, I don't think that the automating of copy is going to be the biggest use case. I don't think it's the most valuable use case. I really do think it's that pre-bidding element. I'd actually say second to that is the post-bidding and sort of really capturing all the learnings and lessons. And again, depending on the AI system design, being able to feed that back all in to improve next time around. I'd actually say that the writing element is probably lower down on my list. But yeah, I'd say the pre-bidding element is the biggest value driver, or where AI has the biggest value driver.
Yeah, let's dig into that a little bit, because I completely agree with you. That is really what I love AI for, is doing that deep research on customers and also combining all that information that we have about the customer, like when we've spoken to them. So when you then talk about writing that first draft, how do you see people then using AI to capture all that pre-sales information that we have and then use it to then write the first draft to make it so it's super personalized and really specific to that customer?
Yeah, from a sort of an AI technology standpoint, how does it use
Yeah.
that information? Yeah. So yeah, there's a common system design in terms of that generation element in a lot of bid and proposal tech at the minute that is called RAG, retrieval augmented generation. It's a really useful technical element to be able to um, generate answers based on predefined and if the system is really good with contextual embeddings as well. So it's sort of all related to the contextual understanding of a particular project or a particular client. And again, if it's really good, it will account for the win themes that you want to put in. It will account for, keynotes, and start to embed those sort of golden threads through. I would make sure the proposal tech or bid tech vendors have got the appropriate database structures and system and infrastructure designs to be able to account for the contextual understanding and the information sort of embedded in a bid library to really produce good snippets of information for that question. I think then that's when the art of the bid professional comes in. And I think, those individuals have a way with words that is unique to them, is unique to the organization, and maybe can't quite be grasped by, LLMs, which are, regurgitating sort of piece of text. I think that's where the bid professionals still come in, and I think they still elevate the copy. I don't think we're at a point where, an LLM or a sort of sophisticated RAG system can sort of automate a full question, and have success against all the client requirements, go on rubrics, and all the extra things you need to do to make a really, really good, submission. But
Think it was like Nicholas Cole, maybe, who said something about like how AI is really good at doing something better than you if you're not very good at doing it. I'm with him on that because I think proposal tools like if they're a good one, can spit out a really good first draft, but it's just not going to be as good as a really good proposal writer. But it's going to be a lot better than the person who's not very good at proposals. Use AI quite a bit for image generation, and it's still clearly AI, and it's kind of crappy, but it's better than what I would have created because I'm a terrible designer. So, but I think going back to your point about not all proposal tech does this really well. So, what questions can we as proposal and salespeople ask when we're purchasing these tools to make sure that we are going to get a proposal tech that will actually provide us with a really good response?
in terms of the actual questions, I would say it really does depend on what your use case is. Um, I created a post this morning about document management systems and how, in our opinion, the sort of legacy systems are dead in terms of the future of bidding because they don't capture all the information that is truly useful and value driving for a bidding team. And in that sense, you're asking your proposal tech vendors, what's your database sort of logic? What's your database infrastructure? Is it a vector database or is it relational database? Because they have different sort of implications to what data can be stored and whether it's just a hard vector search or whether there is a little bit of logic on top of it. I think the questions are, far and vast and go way beyond what LLM do you have at the core of this, which is an understandable question. But a singular LLM does not dictate a platform's ability or capability. There's a lot of infrastructure design and system design setup that goes into really influencing what a platform can and can't do and how sophisticated it can or can't be in the future. Is because arguably the legacy incumbents who are built on legacy code might be able to layer some things on top of their current software. But in terms of that really advanced functionality that might come in the near future, they're a big infrastructure redesign away from it. So I'd, revert all of that information I've just said back to have an understanding of what use cases you really want to, get out of it and really start to look at important questions around the infrastructure design, the scalability, and how future-proofed that sort of particular capability is. And I'd say escape your comfort zone of thinking. If you want a better bid library setup, if you want something that is more sophisticated, really think about what you want to be included in that bid library. Do you want to, have a collaborator performance on certain proposals and past pieces of copy stored in relation to those answers? Do you want to have the marks stored in relation to those answers? Do you want to have client information stored in relation to those answers? Do you want to have your, whether you've won or lost it stored in relation to those answers? And if those are yes, and you think, yeah, that's brilliant because I can query certain parts of the database depending on what the evaluation criteria was, or whether we won it or not, in query, I can pull that information away from the rest of my bid library. If that's something you want, then you need to really ask about that sort of database infrastructure setup.
But I know you are not just talking to proposals and sales folks, you're also talking to buyers. You're seeing both sides of the coin quite a bit. So I'm curious what you're hearing from the buyers right now. And are they changing how they are writing RFPs because of AI, or are they staying the same? I'd love to get your take on what that is.
Yeah, I think it depends on buyer to buyer. Public sector to private sector, local authority, or sort of local state work to federal work. It really does depend on also the type of contract. But sort of on a generic basis, I think right now we're in the era of sort of self-declaration. Have you used AI in any part of this proposal? If so, please state clearly what you've used it for and why you've used it. And we're
Yeah.
not seeing buyers negatively mark submissions. They're not negatively marking submissions. If a submission has been flung into ChatGPT, copy and pasted out, and then submitted, they're just going to get a low mark anyway because it's not going to be very good.
Yeah.
But there's no negative marking for saying that you've used it for research or used it to, help surface your Salesforce to gather past information from that client. I have heard conversations, both directly and down down the grapevine about sort of maybe future proofing how they look for these submissions, what the submission requirements may be. Intermittently, it might be very, very prescriptive questions where they're not so much open-ended anymore. Is very much please describe your process for XYZ and compare it to how you've done it in the past, and please describe how that is going to result in better outcomes for us. Very prescriptive. And again, the reason why that is almost future proofing against current sort of some current AI system designs, is because that question comes with a lot of components, and to answer
Yeah.
it correctly, the similarity searches across your knowledge base, your bid library databases might not come up with the most appropriate results to answer that question, if that makes sense, because you have to have an understanding of how you used to do it, how you're doing it now, and in translation what that means for this client in this context. I think in the future we might tend to, away from written responses. I think there might be video responses. I think there might be microsites where you almost direct them to a URL. And if the procurement team's really advanced, they might have scrapers, and it might be less human led. It might be more algorithm led. Again, that is pure speculation. I've not
Yeah.
heard that directly from buyers, but that is a definite possibility in the future. There's also procurement tech is advancing because that function has its burdens on clients, and that can be a very resource intensive function that has its own inefficiencies. So both areas are advancing in their technology, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I'm with you because I feel like in the past year, how people are buying anything, both in the private and public sector, have changed quite a bit for various reasons. And so not keeping up with that is just a bad idea in general. Considering like the whole reason why we exist as an industry is to sell. So we have to keep up with those. So I'm completely with you. I'm also wondering about the hidden pipeline that we tend to have as sales professionals. You've seen hundreds of bids, possibly thousands. And what kind of patterns do you think CROs and sales teams are completely missing because they're not analyzing their past proposals, like their past submitted proposals?
Yeah. I think this is, said it on LinkedIn, I think a few days ago. This is the one thing the best bid and proposal teams in the world do consistently with a high degree of accountability that the teams that are suffering or low on their hit rates aren't doing. And it is that sort of really in-depth post-mortem analysis. And this is, again, another value driver in AI and in technology. But I agree with you. I think there's a huge amount of untapped insight, learnings, and lessons that you can distill from a successful and an unsuccessful submission. And if you take those lessons into account and put the appropriate practices or lessons learned in place next time, that then there is massive advancements to be had. It's an exponential curve. I think once you do it gradually over time in each and every submission, you'll stop making the same mistakes and you'll start really building a very high degree of quality. Going back to our sort of earlier conversation about that disconnect between sales professionals and bidding professionals, that's a brilliant practice to have in place. Again, culture dependent, and whether it will work or not, it's a brilliant practice to have in place to really show accountability across that full proposal life cycle, that full client life cycle, to what went good and what went bad. In terms of the sort of common trends that we're seeing, again, I'd say it's sort of sector dependent, really, and client dependent, and dependent on the size of the contract. For example, if I'm speaking to a major tier one contractor in the infrastructure space here in the UK and they're bidding for Sizewell C, which is one of those contracts that comes around once in a blue moon and you really want to get hold of it. Again, they've been talking to the public sector for years and years and years about how they can help there. Ultimately, it's going to be a mixture of things that has led to one supplier winning the lead contractor versus another. The best teams do it and the bad teams don't do it. For each organization, there is a serious amount of learnings and lessons that you can take and improve upon by doing it. And it's a simple task, and it's so simple now with technology. You can track things as nuanced as whether a certain individual within the team submitted or completed their task on time, whether they completed it late, if there was a review and there was comments, how many edits did they actually make before then they submit it for the next review? And then in turn, what did that lead to as a score? And if it was a very high score, you might ignore the fact that they were, maybe half a day late because they were really taking their time. But if they were super early and then it led to a low score, you might go, right, how are we writing these pieces of copy? Is there anything we can do to really sort of, extend your time on it, to really think about it, to really improve it? And that's just one micro lesson learned from what could be hundreds of lessons that will all in the future have a big impact if fixed.
I think a lot of proposal teams want to be having like a post-mortem, even if they're not having it. But like, I think a lot of people know the basic best practices for a post-mortem, but what changes with AI? Like, I know that you said it automates some of it, but what do you think that people should be doing differently because they have AI now?
I think they should be putting it in place to track it for them. I think within a good proposal tech vendor, a part of the system design, it will be running in the background and you won't even know it's there. But when day does come and when you get the awardee notification and when you submit your scores and your feedback, and consolidate your answers and then store them back into the bid library, you're going to have a great report that breaks down what went well, what went wrong, and they can get really nuanced as well. So there's a lot of relational elements between a bidding function to why something may have happened and the reasoning behind it, and in turn what that meant. So it doesn't take everything at face value. It can up all the incremental tasks to why a certain piece of or to why something may have happened, whether good or.
And I do have like a bit of a cheeky question. So a lot of the proposal tech vendors are definitely keeping their pricing really close to their best. Like they're hiding it, which is understandable, but you guys are not doing that. So what was the motivation behind being really transparent with your pricing?
Yeah, I think it's multi-layered, but the core reasoning that has pushed this whole approach from our standpoint about accessible pricing and open pricing is that we think that bloated prices have plagued the bid tech market for too long. We hear a lot of woes and cries from bid professionals on LinkedIn, sort of directly when we're talking to them about how that there's this big push on AI and that they
Yeah.
can't even try something, but then they can't get access to a bid tech tool because it's £10,000 minimum 4 seats, and you have to go through this whole demo and sales and onboarding process that's going to take months and months and months. And the rate of change in AI is so fast, and the value that is coming out every week, bi-weekly, is insane and shouldn't be missed, and it shouldn't be locked up behind uh, absurd prices. We don't need to be massively expensive, so we're not massively expensive. I think that's our whole core thesis to behind that pricing model, and how open we are.
Ask everybody this question, but what do you believe is the myth or belief that proposal people just need to let go?
Okay, so I've got two almost. So I think the first one that they just need to let go of would be on this point now is that I can't help. And to be honest, I think that this has, almost gone. We've seen personal opinions on what AI can do go from, hey, AI can't do XYZ for me, it's rubbish, blah, 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 all the way to, oh, it's really good actually, and I use it for XYZ tasks. But for those that are still very reluctant, this is not the blockchain revolution. This is a sort of technology that is genuinely here to stay. And I think if you do not use it to your advantage, that then you are genuinely going to be left behind. Number two, again, sorry, relating to AI, is that AI is this singular component. It's this magic potion that can or cannot perform certain tasks. Can do this or it cannot do this for me. But when you're looking at in our market, bid tech or proposal tech, that there's so much that goes into what feeds a platform's capability, and what it's not capable of doing beyond what LLM they have at the heart of it. There is so much in infrastructure design, system design, and where they see the vision of the platform transcending to is far more important than what LLM do they use. I think that's one thing that really needs to be corrected, not only to help proposal tech vendors like us sort of really promote what our value add is, but also for people to pick the right technology for their use case, to really be able to ask those questions that can really put through all the jargon and go, okay, you answered my questions on that one. This one's not for me, but this tool actually over here is what I need. This is where I see my workflow going. This is where I see our bid team going.
I think with the first one, it's probably that AI just wasn't very good at doing like things. No, like
Yeah,
it gave you a glimpse into the future, and now it's just changed so rapidly and gotten so much better so rapidly. It can feel really overwhelming to learn about what AI is good at and what it can and can't do. And so I don't think you have to be an expert. And just even if you follow one person online who talks about AI, even if it's not like about proposals, you're gonna be able to keep up. You don't have to read everything that's out there, but just
yeah,
keep
for sure.
updated.
If we fast track back to GPT 3.5 and you compare it to the state of the models now and the
So
abundance of the
different.
models now is so significant. They're virtually incomparable. And like you said, you can watch YouTube videos or follow someone who maybe does their own little project and try it yourself. Completely advisable on that. I think with time that will increase the fluency of professionals when it comes to technology and AI, which is fantastic, which is brilliant. And I think the individuals themselves will get a real personal or professional benefit out of it too. And we understand that whilst we build BidScript for the most value for bidding and proposal professionals, it might not be for everyone. Like it might not
Yeah.
be for certain workflows and certain sectors because they have different ways of doing things. But you at least want it to be transactable enough so you can try it and you can find out. Um,
Yeah. So where can people find you? Like if they want to learn more about Henry, you, or BidScript?
Yeah, so oh gosh, with media channels, you can follow myself, any of the team, or the company on LinkedIn. So it's Henry Brogan or BidScript, and from the BidScript page, you can find all the rest of the team that are posting every day really valuable stuff. Instagram channel BidScript, Facebook group BidScript. And even YouTube if you want some sort of longer content or want to see the platform in action.
I'll have all that information in the description box so people can find you really easily. But yeah, it was lovely to talk to you today, Henry. So thank you so much. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks very much, Christina. It was great.
Okay, speak soon.
Bye bye. Bye bye.